So good afternoon. This is the first of the Life After Levels webinars. In the session today, we're going to be having a look at the principles of the NAHT Assessment Framework with a focus on standardisation and moderation. I'm also going to be having a look at the free curriculum designer product that's available from Life After Levels. So this is the first, as I mentioned, this is the first of the webinars that we're doing. So we're going to be giving you a poll at the end, so you can give us the opportunity to give us some feedback. Hopefully you're going to find this session today really, really useful, but we'd welcome any feedback that you've got on this session at the end of it. So I'm going to start off by giving you guys a poll so I can find out how much you guys already know about the NAHT Assessment Framework. So we'll give this a little go. I'm going to kick off this poll and I'm going to leave it open for about 30 seconds to give you guys a chance to respond. So you should now have a question up in front of you and I should be able to see if you guys come back with some responses on that. So I can see some answers coming in. We've got 50% voted so far. 67% is slowly going up. Okay. So I'm going to share the results of that so you guys should be able to see. We've got about a 50-50 split with people that are familiar with the NAHT Assessment Framework. So hopefully you guys are going to find this session of use. So if I hide that. So, the NHT Assessment Framework methodology. So I'm going to start off by just touching on some of the basic principles behind the NHT Assessment Framework. So, a bit of background first. Obviously, the DFE, after they got rid of levels, commissioned the NHT to complete a review and come up with a proposal for how you could assess children. That's where the NHT Assessment Framework was born from. And there's some core principles that underline the methodology. So the first one being that each school should have a customised curriculum, including progression. The word customised can be used quite loosely. The idea here is that what you're going to be doing is getting your teachers together inside of your school to collaborate to tailor a curriculum that meets specifically your school's needs. So the idea is that you're going to be getting, for example, your Year 1 teacher to be talking to your Year 2 teacher, and then having conversations with years 3, 4, 5 and 6 to ensure that you've got a logical progression going out through your curriculum. So you're restructuring how all those objectives are going to be taught year upon year. The key theory with this is that once you've built your curriculum with a flow going through it, in essence almost Bloom's taxonomy, you then go through and you identify the key performance indicators. So in essence, they're the key learning constructs that if the child understands, they will naturally understand all of the curriculum. Because one of the aims of the NAHT Assessment Framework is to try and streamline the assessment process inside of schools. So, because it would be ridiculous for every teacher to assess everything that moves. If you've got, for example, the maths curriculum that contains 50 to 100 objectives, you'd spend all your time assessing and no time supporting your learners. So the whole idea behind the KPIs is that you would identify, as I say, the key learning constructs that if you assess, you can then get a good measure of how the child is progressing throughout the year. So streamlining that assessment workload. What I'm going to do now is we'll just jump into the free curriculum designer and take a look at that product. So from the Life After Levels website, you can basically register to get an account for the free curriculum designer tool. I've obviously got my account already created, and I will just log into the system for you now. So once you log into the free curriculum designer, you basically get presented with this sort of dashboard landing screen. Now, down at the bottom, what we have, what we've called the 5 steps for getting ready. So this is a guide that was put together by Nick Walker to basically help schools go through that process of building their own customised curriculum. So it's got loads of useful advice in there as to how you would engage your teachers and then collaborate to create your own personalised experience for your children. With Curriculum Designer, we basically worked with all of our different partners to put this tool together that contains a range of different assessment frameworks. So if, for example, we look at Key Stage 1 and then mathematics, inside of here we have different frameworks that are available. You've got the National Curriculum from the government, the NHT Assessment Framework, framework where the NAHT have gone through and identified their KPIs. So the NAHT assessment framework applies to reading, writing, maths, key stage 1 and 2. We've also got the free rising stars progression frameworks in there, and then the other one that you can see is the StepUp framework, which was developed by the Cornwall Teaching School Alliance in Birmingham, and is basically built perfectly in alignment with the NHT assessment framework. The idea behind this free tool is that it can be used as a central system for all your teachers to come together and basically collaborate to design your own curriculum. So we'll have a look at the StepUp framework, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So once I've selected my particular curriculum version, I can then see all the different strands that make up this curriculum. And if we went into fractions, for example, we can see the objectives that relate to year 1, and then further down the objectives that relate to year 2. Now, the way that StepUp have constructed their curriculum is such that they've got what we refer to as a parent KPI sat at the top with feeder objectives that lead up to that KPI. The idea for schools that would be using the StepUp framework is that you would only assess against the KPI. However, you'd be using those feeder objectives as basically a cue or a reminder that the child needs to achieve all those sub-objectives to evidence the fact that they've got that particular KPI. Now, as I mentioned, these frameworks are provided as a start point. What you have is the ability to modify these curricula to meet your school's needs. So what we can do is simply put the curriculum into edit mode, and then this is where we could have the application open, potentially projected up on a whiteboard, and to start that professional dialogue around how we want to customise the curriculum. So, for example, there could be a particular concept here: recognise and find and name a quarter as one of the 4 equal parts of a quantity. So with this particular objective, we might decide in our school that I actually want to cover that topic in year 2. And I actually believe that it is a key learning construct as well, so I'll designate that as a KPI. What you may want to do is remove some of the objectives and potentially add your own objectives in from scratch. Now you'll notice the updates that appear in the interface on here. And what the tool does is it makes sure that it gives you feedback to make sure that you're not straying too far away from the actual core curriculum itself, because you wouldn't want to go through and actually delete a load of objectives, then realise that you've not got the necessary coverage inside of your curriculum. So basically, the free curriculum manager is there for you guys to come together and complete this process where you can fully customise your curriculum. I'll just show you a couple of the other frameworks that we have available in the product. So again, if I go out to Key Stage 1 and we have a look under Computing, we have a framework provided from NAHT. So NAHT has basically taken the government curriculum and they've expanded it. So they've refined the subject areas that are available. Underneath each subject area, they've basically designated the specific KPIs that they think need to be covered. There are also curricula from the Geographical Association and the History Association. I know that those two particular curricula were very light in the National Curriculum 2014. So in essence, the government simply key stage end key stage targets, whereas what those guys have done is they've broken it down and actually implemented subject areas into the curriculum. So if we have a look at geography and the national curriculum, we've got 4 areas in there, but what we tend to find is that there's repetition year on year inside of that curriculum, because it's basically the same objectives that apply to year 1 and year 2. Whereas if we look at the Geographical Association version of that curriculum, what they've actually done is implement a natural progression in the curriculum, and they've distilled down those objectives into tangible things that are relevant to year 1 and year 2 children. So, as I say, it's not there to basically act as your Bible. It's there to stimulate debate and help you to customise that curriculum to make it meet your own needs. So that's a little nod to the free curriculum designer, sort of showing how it can be used to basically facilitate the embedding of those NHT assessment framework principles inside of your school. The assessment framework doesn't stop there though. So obviously once you've gone through that exercise and all your teachers are confident that you've got that natural year-on-year progression inside of your curriculum, the next stage is to understand what the definition of good looks like inside your school. This all centres around the process of standardisation. So once you've identified your key learning constructs, often I've worked with schools and they go through this process of standardisation, which is in essence almost like a blind marking meeting where you would pre-agree which KPIs you would attempt to standardise, and send off each of your teachers to go and find the best example of work that they think represents a child meeting that objective. And then in that standardisation meeting, in essence, you would lay these standards out on the table and have a conversation about which one you actually think is the best example. Standardisation is one of those processes. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. It's that exercise, that quite, to be honest, painful exercise that teachers would have to go through, where they have to really say what they genuinely believe is the right standards. I've had examples before where at the standardisation meeting, teachers have turned up and they've been too afraid to bring examples of children's work for fear that they'd be poo-pooed. It's that process where you can engage all of your staff in your school to have that open professional dialogue around what that standard is. Now, the Life After Levels have been working with the NHT and a group of sort of NHT assessment framework adopters to curate a set of exemplar standards. These are going to be released via the Life After Levels website and also into the Free Curriculum Manager over the course of the next couple of weeks. I've got a couple of examples of these standard files available now. So this is an example from a school where they've put together their Year 5 writing exemplar standard. And what this particular school have done, they've basically given some context to the work. So in essence, they're sort of saying what kind of setting in the classroom this work was done in. Was it in the morning, was it in the afternoon, what the tasks were the children completing. Some of the other standards contain a commentary as well, so basically a detailed description of the work. Now, the main purpose of these exemplar standards is to give everyone clarity as to what good looks like. So in essence, as long as it ticks the box to show you what the child's work is and show you which part of the child's work meets the standard and can facilitate that professional dialogue, it's achieved what it needs to do. So we can see in this example that what the school have done, they've actually annotated multiple KPIs onto a single piece of work, which for those guys seems to have worked. I've got another example from a school called Featherstone Primary, and they've got a slightly different format. So at the top of their document, they basically give us a nice preface listing out all the KPIs for this particular year of study. And then what we've got is, we refer to as the performance standard. Basically, it's a wordy version of the KPIs. So a paragraph that describes a child that has met all of the KPIs. Now, again, for these guys, it's a very, very similar format in that we have an example of the child's work where they're annotating the particular KPI and showing how that child's work would meet that KPI. So hopefully this gives you a little flavour around what an exemplar standard actually looks like. I think the key point with this is that it doesn't really matter what it looks like as long as it's achieving the aim of facilitating that professional dialogue and giving everyone clarity over what the standard is that the children need to be working towards. I've had examples of where schools have actually published their exemplar standards to their parents to actually show the standards that their children need to work towards, to give everyone that clarity. Now, I'm just going to jump back into the Curriculum Designer tool. So inside of Curriculum Designer, you'll see that there is this section called the Learning Locker. Now, I mentioned about the release of the NAHT or the Life After Levels exemplar standards. Now, inside of the Learning Locker, you get one of these for every single objective. There's 5 different areas. So we have teaching notes, which is designed to basically keep a log of useful information that can be shared between teachers, potentially best practice about how you would teach that particular objective. Teaching resources, which could be used to store a repository of lesson resources. Core resources and extension resources, which are designed to, those areas are designed to hold learning resources that could be consumed directly by children. So that could be a link to a video to watch online, a PDF to download, or an online quiz player. The final section is the exemplar standard materials. So this is going to be seeded within the next couple of weeks with our exemplar standards that relate to, it's about 70% of the NHT assessment framework KPIs. So the idea is that you guys could then potentially start to upload your own exemplar standards to this material, or just directly consume those exemplar standards from Life After Levels and potentially publish them so you could use them on your own school's website. I'll come back onto that in a little bit. So, just moving back to the principles of the NAHT assessment framework. If I can pick the right screen. In fact, before we progress on from this point, I'm just going to jump in with another quick poll. I'd be interested to know how how many of you guys are familiar with this process of refining your curriculum? And I'd be interested to see whether or not it's an exercise that you've already gone through, or something that you may look to start to do, or something potentially that you're not interested in at all. So I'm just going to open up a little poll, and again, we'll have this open for about 30 seconds. A little bit like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I can see all the votes going up and down. Got 83% in. That takes us up to our 30 seconds. I'll just close that and I'm going to share the results with you guys. So, it's a bit of an even split really. 40% that are planning to start, 40% that are on with it, 20% that don't know yet. So, interesting reading. Going back to the NHT Assessment Framework, so just almost recapping on the journey that we're going through in curating our curriculum. So the teachers have all come together. They've picked up their a framework as a start point. Could be the national curriculum, the NHT Assessment Framework, Rising Stars, or StepUp. You then had that professional dialogue around the curriculum to ensure that all your teachers year on year are clear about what each teacher is teaching. So the Year 2 teacher knows exactly what the Year 1 teacher is going to be teaching, so they've dovetailed their curricula to work together. The Year 2 teachers also engage with the Year 1 teacher to ensure that the children are working to the correct standard. So the Year 2 teacher knows exactly what to accept or what they're going to get from the end of Year 1. Now, that is all the process of standardisation. In order to take those standards and really make a difference inside of the school, this is where you would start to use the capture of evidence to support your assessments. When we say capture of evidence, that may just be that there's you're keeping a log of where the children have got great examples of work in their books. It may be that you use an online tracking tool to capture examples and upload them against objectives. But the key point here is that teachers are using that standard when they're assessing to review the evidence to make sure that their assessment is consistent. So that is in essence the classroom practice that we need to see happening once you've been through that exercise of standardisation. The next step is the process of moderation. So moderation really, it serves two purposes. So the action of the senior leadership team coming down to review the evidence that's been gathered, the assessments that have been made, and comparing them against the standard. And we're going to be getting one of two benefits out of that, ideally both. So the first thing would be looking to raise the quality of assessment inside of the school. Because it may be the case that you've got certain teachers that are not really assessing in the right way. So they're marking that a child has achieved something when actually the evidence doesn't match the exemplar standard. And it could turn out that you're actually identifying potentially some support that's needed for your teachers to elevate the quality of assessment inside of your school. So it's an opportunity for open professional dialogue to find out how you can improve that classroom practice. If you are in the situation where your teachers are correctly assessing against the standard, and all your assessments are accurate and you can trust the quality of data that you're getting inside of your school, then it brings into play the second stage, which is all about raising the standard. So it's that constant professional dialogue around how you can improve the standard inside of your school. So in essence, you're constantly going to be challenging the teachers to submit new exemplar standards, to review the KPIs, to refine the quality of the information that's shared to you so you can be really accurate about the assessments that you're making. So again, let's say we've gone all the way through this journey where we've built this curriculum that we've all got confidence in, we've identified our KPIs so we know exactly what we're assessing, we've standardised so we know what level we're assessing against, and we've moderated so we're confident that all our teachers are assessing in the right way, and you're constantly iterating to improve those standards. It's then potentially time to look to share those standards with the outside world. It may be that you want to share them with a school down the road to help moderate your own standards. So you're cross-comparing between potentially different feeder primary schools for a secondary school to ensure that you're all working to the same standard. Or, just as the example that I gave before, you're sharing them with parents so they can support their children to work towards the standard that you would expect inside of your school. That is again where you can be using the free curriculum designer. So if I just jump back to my curriculum designer, back on the home page of Curriculum Manager, so a little recap. once I've logged in to Curriculum Designer, you get a Curriculum Designer sort of launch button down here. Once I click that, it takes me into my home page where I can see all my different key stages, and obviously inside of those we contain the assessment frameworks. Under the action code here, we have the ability, and we've called it Manage Public Access. So this is the ability to publish your curriculum to the outside world. By default, it'll be switched off. I've already switched mine on in anticipation. But when I switch this on, what it does is it gives me a URL that I could potentially add to my school's website, so I can give people a link to my curriculum inside of my school. Then it's a case of you guys making a conscious decision as to which elements of the curriculum you would want to share. So if you're using the NHT assessment framework approach across multiple subjects, you could actually choose to only show the KPIs on this public view of the curriculum. If you're a primary school and not a secondary school, you could then have a little bit more control and potentially switch off the key stages that you wouldn't want to show. And you also have the flexibility to control which areas of the learning locker would be displayed in this public view. So I'll show you what that public view would look like. So this in essence is your school's public view. And what it gives you is a consistent summary of the entire curriculum that you're going to be teaching inside of your school. So you don't get any gaps and differentiation between your subjects. It's a full granular look at everything that the children are going to be learning inside of your school. And again, this is one of the core features of the free Curriculum Designer, which you could be registering for right now and basically making the most of inside of your school. Because obviously if you are a state school, as a minimum, you're going to be teaching against the National Curriculum 2014. So in order to meet your statutory requirements, you could be simply just publishing a version of the National Curriculum 2014 and adding this link to your school's website. One little note that I will mention about this, you can see at the top, this is called Ramsey School. Inside of your curriculum system, under the little frog head at the top here, we have something called My Preferences. And this is where you can determine the name of your school. So we will say this is the best school in the world. Not that good if we can't spell. Once I've saved that update and I refresh this view, then we can see we now have the curriculum to the best school in the world. So you can personalise that experience for you guys. So hopefully you guys have got some use out of this little walkthrough on the free curriculum design and the overview of the NAHT assessment framework. There's a couple of concepts that we did touch during the presentation where we're talking about the capture of evidence for assessment and that simple process of moderation looking at the evidence in alignment with the standards. Now, Curriculum Designer is one element of a rich solution called Frog Progress. Frog Progress has been designed in alignment with all of the principles of the NHT assessment framework and is there to basically facilitate that easy moderation against the standards, ensuring that you've got consistent assessment across your school. It's a really simple to use product that gives you really simple yet meaningful data to drive professional dialogue inside of your schools. Now, I'd like to thank you guys for your time on the webinar today. And obviously, as part of filling out the feedback form, I'd welcome any feedback that you can give on the presentation that you've had. And if you would be interested in finding out more information about Frog Progress, just let us know on the feedback form. Thank you very much, and I will speak to you again.